What's good, y'all? Today, I'm very excited to have one of my best friends on. This is Courtney Branch. This guy is a person I've known for 2 decades now, practically since
Yeah, almost.
since we were in middle school. In '03 is when we graduated middle school. So that lets you know how long it's been because we went to middle
Yeah.
school the whole time. And this guy has been amazing to watch as he has progressed and grown. He was the goody goody kid when we were in middle school. I'm lying, but he was one of the smartest kids, if not the smartest. You were the smartest kid in our class every single year, correct?
I'm not gonna give myself that title, but if you want to give it to
I'm
me,
just
I
saying
think.
we had honor roll between you and Amina, and I'm
Yeah.
sure Amina took it personal a couple times, and you might have beat her out a couple times.
You talking about those awards we used to get? Oh yeah, I got a couple of those. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. See, so this guy is a brilliant mind. It's been pretty cool to have grown up watching that and knowing where he is now as a man, as a father, as a husband. And today we're about to break down exactly what it is that he does. He follows the rules, and of course, we're gonna ask him the number one question that proves that. And the thing that we need to make sure that everyone knows is that you ain't got to grow up to be rich, but you can grow up to have the amount of money that allows you to live the life that you enjoy. And you can do this through a position, job, profession that allows you to actually enjoy your day opposed to despise your life because you think I hate my job and it's really I hate my life. So let's bring this time into the real time because that 24 stays the same. So with that, let's get to the most important question of the day, which is, hey man, how you feel about your job?
I feel good, man. When you got a job and all that kind of stuff, you have to understand what your values are and what you're looking for and everything like that. For me, for my job, what I kind of looked at for a career is having good life balance between work and home and all that kind of stuff. I didn't want to feel like I was always working and stressed about work when I'm with my family and stuff like that. So work is good. I go to work. I get my 40 hours in each week. I feel like I do something that does kind of matter. I'm not going to act like it's the most important thing in the world, but it does kind of have factors to it and all that kind of stuff that can be beneficial to people as a whole and all that kind of stuff. So overall, I feel pretty good about it. There's still better things out there, I believe, for me as well. So I'm not just content with just staying right where I'm at, but there's more. So, but I'm happy and content with where I am and looking forward to the future.
That's great, man. You're happy with what you do, and that's what we need to hear. Because obviously people wake up and have heart attacks on Monday morning going to work because they hate their job that much. I think that's a Les Brown quote,
Mhm.
paraphrase.
Yeah.
All right, man. So what was the first profession? I feel like I actually know the answer. What was the first profession you remember wanting to have growing up?
Oh, well, first professional was like professional football player, to keep it real, like professional football. I remember I was in third grade, and you know how you used to do little things for third grade, like you would like write stories and like you announce it to the class, like what you want to be when you grow up. I remember we did that in third grade, and I was like, oh, I want to be a professional football player, basketball player, and baseball player. And like the whole class laughed at me and like said I couldn't do it. And obviously I didn't do it because I'm right here. But I didn't realize that even at that time, like you literally couldn't play all three sports because they overlap with each other too much.
Well, let's give you a little bit credit. My guy, he is not 6 foot. I don't remember. Were you a guard? Were you a guard?
Yeah, I played guard and then defensive tackle.
Okay, so this is only important because, so side note, I remember us playing football when it was your birthday and it was out in the snow. That was
Yeah.
so friggin' fun, just
Yeah.
hitting
That was a
people
tradition.
in the field across the street of Harry Davis. But there also was this one game that when me and Ryan came back to watch at East High when y'all played, I want to say St.
Right.
Ed's.
St. Ed's, yeah.
Man, listen, y'all, that team. And I love my high school, East High. That was my first school. That's the one I claim more than the one I graduated from for several reasons. Nonetheless, I love that school and it was fun playing for them. But that was a sad day, man. When I say we showed up, there was an ambulance pulling away with
Yeah.
It was the quarterback.
Our starting quarterback broke his leg.
Yeah.
First second play of the game.
Yeah.
Hey, it wasn't our fault. He knew what the blocking scheme was, and he decided to scramble like a crazy man instead of throwing the ball away. So that's not on us. I'll put that on him.
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't. Me and Mike showed up late to the game. We got there and we saw the ambulance pulling off. So here's the funny thing, though. As soon as we enter, all you hear is carnage. Just bah, bah, bah. It's like, oh my God. Every single play
Mm-hmm.
If somebody was getting laid out, it was about 40% of the team almost every single play, on offense and on defense. I was wondering how they was hitting people that wasn't even near the play of the ball. I'm like, what is happening here? It was disturbing. These people was getting laid out. It was concussions. You know, we got our bell rung conversations.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Man, that game was sad. But the point of this was, this man held his own. He was going
I
to Division I collegiate linemen. That were people that were going off to college for that.
Yeah.
And St. Ed's, they actually had I want to say Wisconsin's running back at the time, because he
had Wisconsin's running back. They had like a guard going to Pitt. They had like a safety. He ended up going to O State. The dude I was going to cross against, like when I was on the offensive line, the defensive lineman across from me, the two deep tackles were both like all state that year. So I was trying to do my thing. I didn't do my. I'll be honest. I ain't do much on defense. I ain't get no tackles.
I wasn't gonna mention defense.
I'm honest, you know. But offense, you know, I got my pancakes in though. I was eating breakfast pretty good that day. You know.
That's all I'm saying. I got it. He didn't go D1 or play in college, but he held his own compared to. I'm sorry, y'all. No disrespect if y'all watching from that team. Y'all know what happened. I wish I didn't. Anyways, man. So, all right. So, what was the moment? What was the switch when you were like, all right, man, I'm probably not going to be a professional athlete. I need to figure out what I'm going to do professionally.
It was probably the summer after my freshman year because I wanted to play college ball for the longest. I was debating between when I was coming out of high school, I got accepted into John Carroll and Ohio State. And I was kind of debating and going back and forth. Like, well, I know John Carroll was specifically recruiting me to play football there. Ohio State was not recruiting me to play football. But I was like, I had a thought like, if I go to Ohio State, maybe if I get in really good shape, I could like try to walk on and do all that kind of stuff and everything. But ultimately, partially the reason I chose Ohio State was John Carroll, for those of you who don't know, is in Cleveland. Like Cleveland Heights, University Heights. So it's like a 15-minute drive from my house. And I was like, I don't know if I want to be that close to home, you know, in college. So Ohio State seemed like the next best option. And I knew it would provide me with a lot of opportunities to meet people and network and all those kind of things and just kind of get me out of Cleveland to like expand my horizons and all that kind of stuff and get me out of my comfort zone a little bit. And so, but I still, even as a freshman, I'm like, you know, I hit the weights, I go to the gym, you know what I'm saying? I might be able to make this thing happen still, you know, because if I get on the field at Ohio State, I'm definitely going to the league. Right. But it was probably the summer after my sophomore year. And I was like, oh, you know what, this summer, I'm going to dedicate to getting in shape, and, you know, get in the gym and like, I'm going out for the team next year. And then that summer I did not do it. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm just gonna focus on school and everything. So yeah, I decided to hang them up then that summer after my freshman year.
I feel it. I think we all had our dreams and aspirations for after freshman year.
Right.
You know, I fractured my spine senior year of high school. So that kind of ruined my career.
Yeah,
I was recruited to play football for UC, and that whole thing I threw it out the window once I fractured my spine. But that's a whole different conversation for a whole different day.
I remember that time.
Yeah, it was not fun, and there was a whole lot of messed up stories that went along with that, connected to Terrence and Ryan. But that's a different combo, like I said. All right, man. So we held up the conversation long enough. Let's go ahead and allow you to say your job title and what it actually means.
Okay. My current title right now is I'm an external auditor for the Department of Developmental Disabilities. So in general, an auditor in a sense, it comes from the word audit, which just means to kind of, I say in layman's term, is to check to make sure things are correct. Essentially, that's the most basic way I can say it, is what an auditor does. It just makes sure things are accurate and up to the code or up to the rules and standards that they're supposed to be set by. So for me, with being with the Department of Developmental Disabilities, that comes through a lot of that stuff. Funding comes through the Department of Medicaid, which is a federal program. And so a lot of those Medicaid funds go to people who provide services to people with disabilities. And so whenever this is for anybody that's listening, if you ever get federal money from any agency, so make sure you have documentation to prove whatever you did to get that money. You always want to make sure you have that. So essentially what I do is I audit the providers who provide services to people with disability and get reimbursed through Medicaid. So they're required to follow certain rules that are set in the Ohio Administrative Code and all those things. And so I check that documentation and make sure it's accurate with what the rules are and that it has all the requirements for being reimbursed. And if it's not proper, then I tell them they owe some money back to the government.
So auditing primarily is connected to finances, frankly.
Yeah, most of the time you can have compliance audits as well, and you can have compliance audits is like you have financial audits and then compliance audits, and you can even have like control audits. So there are other aspects where it cannot be financial. Like a control audit will be like, say for instance, for a business, a control would be something you put into place to prevent errors from occurring. And so those controls can be related to financial things, but those controls can also be related to more like, say if you, I don't know, worked for a chemical supply company and all that kind of stuff, you might have certain things you want controls set up to make sure things are properly filled. If you're like doing all these chemicals and all that kind of stuff, things need to be mixed properly and all that kind of stuff. There's different ways you can audit those things, but primarily for me, most of it is going to be financial, but there are other aspects that can be non-financial as well. So I don't know if I explained that well enough with the controls and everything and all that kind of stuff, but also I did mention compliance as well. Compliance is like the rule. So for me and people in whoever reside in Ohio, Ohio has Ohio Administrative Code as well as Ohio Revised Code, which are certain codes and laws that are to be followed, like based off different funding sources and all that kind of stuff for like government funds and those kind of things. So there are also compliance sides to that. So where you make sure that the agency, individual, company, whatever it is, whatever code you're looking into is in compliance with that code and all those things. So,
yeah. So who's the type of person that takes on this job?
Usually a person who's pretty analytical, a person who's pretty into numbers, a person who has likes to follow rules. Usually is a typical person that kind of does that. I do want to say from my experience working as an auditor, I am a little bit different from other auditors I've met. There are some that are like me, but they're usually pretty nerdy. You might say I'm nerdy, but I kind of think I'm a little cool. I'm slightly cool, but I got a little nerd in me too, you know. But besides that, no. But for real, it's usually people who are just usually people who like numbers, who go by rules and all those kind of things, and like things orderly and to follow like guidelines and all that kind of stuff. Follow the rules.
So obviously there can be an auditor in many different markets and industries, and the government has its own auditors and things like that. So when you become an auditor for a company, do you have to learn all of its compliance regulations and requirements? Or is this something you go to school for? Because I would assume that based on so many different auditors that are out there, it's impossible for you to know everything. Like an attorney will be able to be licensed in Ohio and maybe they can cover certain laws, but once they travel to a different state, they got to learn a whole bunch of new state laws.
Right.
So that's what I'm getting at. So how do you stay up on the game? And if you were to become an auditor for a whole different company, does that information just transfer, or do you have to stay in the
So that's a good question. So yeah, like you said, there's auditors for every different avenue of business, every different types of company. All for any like Fortune 500 company is going to have like their own set of auditors and be audited to a certain extent. Like you said, there's IRS audits and all that kind of stuff, SEC audits and all those kind of things. But then companies like that will also have their own internal auditors. A lot of the big companies that you will hear that house auditors are like the big four accounting firms, which is Ernst & Young, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte. I'm gonna forget the fourth one now. Excuse me for the fourth person. You do matter too. There is a fourth one. I can't remember off the top of my head. But but yeah, so those are the main companies that house. Those are like probably the most popular places that have auditors, and usually there's local regional ones as well as smaller local ones that can be around. Like Plant Moran is one that's kind of like Midwest and all that kind of stuff. Then even down here in Columbus, there's a company called I'm blanking on the name now, but there's local accounting firms as well where you can all work at to become auditors and those things. But to get to your point, in terms of knowing all the rules, no, you can't know all the rules. For me, those are all private companies and all that kind of stuff. I work for a government agency, so I need to know the Ohio Revised Code. Primarily for my current job, actually, it's more of the Ohio Administrative Code that is connected with Medicaid rules in terms of the specifics with that. You can even get down into more specifics with the OAC, so I won't get to too many of those details because it's really specific. But yeah, I have to know all those specific codes that are affected by Medicaid in the Ohio Administrative Code, even to get more specific to the home community-based services, which is kind of the things I review for my audits. And so that's the aspect that I need to know and need to learn. And I would say the biggest thing for an auditor is you don't need to know all the rules, but you do need to be able to adapt to the rules when they change. Because even with what I do, the rules change from year to year, from month to month sometimes. They can change multiple times throughout the year, different things you work on. And so when you're an auditor, you just have to be able to kind of learn on the go. Because when I was at my previous position before where I was at now, I would go from school districts to counties to villages and townships and do different audits. And so with that came different rules that we had to look at. There was some overlap with just general Ohio Revised Code rules and things like that. But for the most part, you had to adjust and like learn what the rules were for that specific agency. And for any entity, whether it's a government entity or a private entity, you need to learn their rules essentially and just be able to adapt the rules, kind of like a lawyer, but you do need to just be able to adapt quickly to your situation for whoever you're auditing at that time.
Okay. So I'm glad that you mentioned that it sounds like you have good family life balance. I know people put work first, work-life balance, but I figured I would go family life balance because that
I like that better.
with that, is it fair that it's to say that it's necessary for you to have that? Because I'm guessing just like HR stresses people out when they may show up. You don't seem like the person people are excited to see when you walk in the room.
Yeah, usually people aren't excited to see me, but they are usually happy to have met me. I do like to say that. So they may be a little bit leery when I first introduce myself or when I first give them a call and all that kind of stuff. And they realize they're under an audit. They usually get nervous and all those kind of things. But even despite if a provider is not the greatest provider and I have to audit them and tell them they owe money, usually I can deliver it and tell them the news in a palatable way where they aren't trying to kill me, and all that kind of stuff. But in all seriousness, no, I think it's a lot, and just respecting people and all that kind of stuff, and being honest and open with them, and just giving clear communication and all those kind of things. So it can be difficult to have to like tell people like you owe $10,000 back to Medicaid because you didn't document properly. So it is nice to not have to do that all the time. But honestly, once I clock out, I'm at home, you know what I'm saying? I'm not worried about it, especially once I have my son and all that kind of stuff. You really realize like what truly is significant in life and all that kind of stuff. While I do appreciate my job and I'm happy to go to work and all those kind of things, even the stressors that come, because work does get stressful at times, there's things that happen, you know what I'm saying? If you never have a job that's stressful, I don't know a job like that doesn't exist, so even when that happens, I still understand that like I have family and I have a son and all that kind of stuff who loves me and all those kind of things. And so to be able to think about that and have that makes work even that much easier and simpler. And even when it's a stressful day, I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm gonna be done with this at 4:30 and I get to go home to my son and my wife and what I'm saying, and get to be with them and all those kind of things. But even with all that said though, work for the most part is solid though for me.
So it's interesting that you brought up your family even more and developed on that and how they have played a role and impacted you in your life and allowing it to be at peace
Yeah.
when you get off work.
Mhm.
I'm curious to know how much of this balance that you have with your life is connected to just who you are, or was this something you had to learn? Because I mean, many people know I was a case manager when I came out of college, and I stayed with my sister for about a year and a half. And when I tell you, I needed to, not because of finances, I could afford a home. Like I initially moved in because I was leaving school and I needed somewhere temporarily to stay while I transitioned to a home. And then it was just like, man, I was working with kids with extreme mental and behavioral issues and court ordered to work with me. And my sister had my niece and nephew who were attending great schools and they were growing up and living a great lifestyle that I didn't know. And I know for a fact that you didn't grow up in the best neighborhood either. And to see that and to know that the kids I'm working with are living in extreme polar opposite realities. I needed to see that. I needed to come home to a happy family, opposed to me coming home to an empty house.
Mhm.
And it also helped with me saving money. But it really was something I needed for my mental health. And I would definitely say even when I left and even when I lived there, uh, it wore on me, and I don't think I had the balance. It was definitely something I had to adapt and learn, and I'm still learning. So for someone to talk with so much confidence like you are right now, I'm just curious to know at what point did you develop that, or did you always have that?
No, I definitely didn't always have that because I would say probably when I first started working, like right my first year out of college, and I got my job, my first job there, I would say I was living by myself at the time, so I would go to work, then go back to my apartment, and I'll be all by myself. And I would say sometimes I would dwell like in my mind, like think about the things like maybe mistakes I made initially and all that kind of stuff. And then my first job, I was able to take a laptop with me home because I was pretty mobile, so I would work around different places in the county and in the central Ohio area. So I always had to be mobile. So my work was always essentially with me as well. So I would carry that stress with sometimes that early on when I first started because I was like thinking like, oh, I gotta be better, gotta get this right, gotta get that right, and all that kind of stuff. So always having the computer with me. Sometimes I would get on it when I was at home and at work and like try to get stuff done when I wasn't technically working, but you know what I'm saying, trying to get stuff done when I could and everything to kind of get under budget and all these kind of different things. But then as I kind of got older and you know what I'm saying, I'm a spiritual person, so also with my faith and all that kind of stuff as well, you know what I'm saying, I had to get prayed up me myself personally and all that kind of stuff and find that balance there. So it took me a couple years to kind of find that balance of like the of work and then also just having my life because work was and initially for me was a little tough just to kind of, I guess, when I was in college and all that kind of stuff, you kind of have a class, you either do well or don't do well, and then you move on to another subject next semester and all that kind of stuff. But with it, like when I first started working, I realized like, oh, like this job is gonna be here for a while. It's not like I get to move on to something else next semester and all that kind of stuff. So that part was an adjustment to me, in terms, especially with like balance it with like being at home by myself and like dwelling on things. But I would say as I matured like spiritually as well, and then I became just more confident and then just began not to worry about things. And when I stopped worrying about things became better and easier to like work and all that kind of stuff as well.
Okay, okay. So
And then having a family just made it even that much easier.
that's why I figured you were gonna get there. Okay, perfect. And I figured that just your wife, your child, help even you out, level you out, put things in perspective.
Oh
Obviously, I know that you're deeply spiritual, so all of those things really probably help. Plus, you're able to, as you mentioned, come home and be off work. Sometimes some of
yeah.
us struggle with that, and I'm sure you have days where you probably work from home too. But some of
Yeah,
us,
yeah. And when you have a kid, yeah, when you have a kid, they don't know anything about work. They
uh,
don't. I mean, I think my son kind of knows because of COVID and all that kind of stuff and quarantine. I am literally working from home right now, but So my son does know, like my office chair is like, oh, daddy work. He can pick that out now. But before that, like whenever I walked through the door, he just knew it was playtime. He said, you know, my playmate was here. Daddy was here to play with. And so yeah. So yeah, they don't let you. And it's good, it's refreshing and all that kind of stuff too. So to just you can't worry about it because you got a kid and you want to play with them and have fun.
That's amazing. So I gotta take some steps back
Okay.
in the conversation, or better yet, steps away.
Okay.
But still talking about your job and your type of position. In the world of COVID, there's a lot of people going down for PPP fraud, like the loan fraud and whatnot.
Okay.
Is it your position that's going out there doing the research and seeing if these, not literally your job, but I'm saying like auditors out there doing the research and discovering that people have been putting in fraudulent information in order to acquire so much money from the government?
Yeah. So usually an auditor would be responsible for looking into stuff like that, like if it's loan applications and all that kind of stuff, or for people who are filing for like unemployment, all those different things, stuff like that. If you got any like financial hardship, usually if the person that's looking into it, if that was like accurate and you're receiving the right amount, is usually an auditor, or at least somebody with like a financial background, typically an accounting background and all that kind of stuff. But typically the person who looks into that stuff is typically auditors. So yep.
Okay. And when it comes to your position, I mean, since you mentioned accounting and those type of things, how transferable are your skills? Like, what type of jobs can you take on as an auditor, or better yet, with your background?
Right. Yeah. Because I really shouldn't call, because my degree is in accounting, so essentially I can get any, for the most part. Well, I should backtrack that. So coming out of college, you can pretty much go into any accounting field, which can be pretty variable. You can go into tax, you can go into audit, you can go into financial, like kind of like accounts receivable, accounts payable, all that kind of stuff. Within the different, anything with financial, you can pretty much go into those kind of things coming out of college with an accounting degree. Now, as you start to get more years into your career, it becomes more specific and all those kind of things. So now for me, I probably would, for the most part, have to follow in the auditor's track. Probably with it, but with advanced degrees and those things like that, I could kind of wrap myself around to more of like where you could become like more of like a CFO, essentially, as chief financial officer, or like a financial director. Those kind of avenues are still like available to me because I have the accounting background. And then if I was to get like an MBA and all those kind of things, I could easily like navigate to something like that as well. For me, and but then for but if you think about, for that's more so for like a government agency and all that kind of stuff. There's different positions where you could call them like deputy directors and all that kind of stuff. So that's the track I would be on for staying with the government. If I went and worked for private companies and all that kind of stuff, you can still I don't know if you can hear that in the background or not. But you could go the track of being, you can multiple areas. You can go be a like a comptroller and all that kind of stuff. You can be a and I'm blanking. But essentially there's a lot of different avenues you can go. Once you do start getting into the auditor's track, you do tend to stay in that area and everything. But just because you kind of get more specific with that, but you will see a lot with people who go to the big four financial accounting firms that I mentioned earlier. Well, I mentioned 3 out of the 4. They'll essentially. So what they do is they kind of go audit the major Fortune 500 companies. So what you will see happen a lot is they'll go on audits and work with like that company. Just say, for instance, they went and worked for, I don't know, did an audit for Cardinal Health or something like that. That's a company that's local here in Columbus. Or just say Nike. I guess that's more of a national brand. Just say they went and audited Nike. They would build relationship with the people at Nike, and then they would go from working at their accounting firm to being kind of cherry picked to come work at Nike, and then they'll like get a position there, where usually in a financial track or something like that, where they're working within the financial division. It could be you working on financial reporting side, or it could be like internal audits and all that kind of stuff. It kind of depends on whatever you want to do. Because usually even with auditing. You can do a lot of financial reporting, audits, and things like that. And so once you know the financial reporting aspect of a company, you can pretty much go anywhere you want within the financial field, essentially, if you know it well enough, and kind of do whatever you want from there. So it is pretty versatile, and it's all about what your initiative is, and like kind of what your focus is and what your goals are, where you want to take it from there.
Okay, okay. So go ahead and let's lay it out. Let's lay the path of from you. I'm assuming this passion really started in college, not high school.
I would say even a little bit earlier than that. It kind of started because of my older brother. My older brother Chris, he's like he's 4 years ahead of me in school. So when we were coming out of middle school, when we were graduating middle school, he was graduating high school. So he was going into college to become like he was going to major in accounting. And so he used to always talk about it and all that kind of stuff. He said it was like good for people with numbers and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm like, you know what I'm saying? I feel like business is cool and everything like that. And as I kind of got a little bit older, took a couple of accounting classes at East High and kind of saw how it worked. And I enjoyed those accounting classes and everything. And so I'm like, you know what, maybe that's something I'll do once I get to college. And so that's what I declared my major to be, was accounting once I got to Ohio State. And then so I started on that, and then once I got into the classes, they weren't easy classes or anything like that. I'm not gonna lie, but I thought, you know, once I kind of learned more about business and everything like that, I just realized like, oh, everybody has accountants. Everybody needs an accountant. If you don't have an accountant, it's probably gonna be some issues because you're probably gonna do something wrong. So I did find like, I'm like, you know, saying some good job security in accounting, and then also people would tell me, you know, how accounting. And this is more specific to just the accounting and finance majors, but people always tell me like, if you get an accounting degree, you can get a finance job, but if you get a finance degree, you can't get an accounting job. That would be one thing that people would say a lot back when I was in college and everything. And so I thought, like, you know what I'm saying, it's pretty secure, and as well as pretty marketable as well, and it's just pretty versatile into the different avenues you can go in terms of a career and everything.
So, all right, so we got some of the foundation for that. So go ahead and let's lay out your path. I don't know if you had any actual internships or whatnot during college, or if you were part of any organizations that helped develop these skills. So so break down that.
Yep, I got you. So kind of once I got into college and everything like that, you kind of got to figure out what's the lay of the land and everything like that. So what I did is there's usually hopefully for most universities, we had like an involvement fair where you get to meet the different organizations that's on campus and all that kind of stuff. And so I wouldn't say my freshman year I got involved, but my sophomore year I started to attend NABA, which is the National Association of Black Accountants. So I started attending their meetings. That's where my eyes were like really open to the world of like accounting and all that kind of stuff, and networking and all those kind of things. And so first I was just involved at the basic level. I just attend the meetings and kind of find out different information. That's where we would have, and we would on a weekly basis kind of had companies come and give presentations. So that's where I would meet like the companies like Deloitte, Ernst & Young, that might have been who I forgot earlier, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and no, I don't know. I feel like I'm never going to get all four in a row, but that's where I meet those kind of accounting firms, and also places like, there's so many different companies. I can't think of them, but a lot of different companies would come into our meetings and all that kind of stuff. And that's where you get an opportunity to network. And then from there was regional conferences that we could go to. And so I wasn't doing that stuff my sophomore year, but probably once I got into my junior year, I started doing more of that, where I got a position within the NABA. At first I was the, I can't even remember the name of the position, but I was in charge of the website. So that was my first role with them. Then I became the secretary and all that kind of stuff. So as I became more involved, as I got into like my junior and senior year, that's where I learned about networking with the companies and learning about the internships over the summer and all that kind of stuff. And how essentially, once you get an internship, if you do well with your internship, that'll pretty much be your way into the door of the company, essentially. So if there's a company you want to work for really when you're coming out of college, if you can get an internship with them, that's kind of your ticket in. And so that was the biggest thing. And so I kind of as I started to navigate that, I initially thought I wanted to do like Big Four stuff, which is like EY, PwC, and all those companies that I keep mentioning but can't quite get all the names of. They
What's EY Ernst & Young? Got it. Okay.
Ernst & Young, yeah, sorry about that. And so though, as I thought I wanted to do those companies at first, but then the people I initially met, like when I was a freshman and sophomore, that are accountants that went to work to those places and everything like that, and they would come back and tell stories and everything. They would kind of talk about like the work-life balance and like how many hours they would be putting in during their week and stuff like that. And I was thinking, I don't know if I want that specifically. It sounds cool and everything, but wasn't sure if I wanted that. So as I started to go to different what you call it, like career fairs and job fairs and all that kind of stuff, I ended up meeting the Auditor State, which is the that's for Ohio, Auditor State of Ohio. They audit the state of Ohio essentially. So when they audit townships, villages, school districts, counties, cities, all those different kind of things, all those different agencies. A lot of the bigger ones like the counties and cities and school districts, they'll put out what they call is a CAFR, which is a comprehensive annual financial report. And so they audit, a lot of those get audited they audit the CAFR. They audit what's get put in the CAFR, which is essentially the financial reports for them annually, or sometimes they're biannually. But so I met with them and interviewed with them and got an internship with them over the summer from between my junior and senior year. And so once I had the internship, the internship went great. They really loved me. And so that next year, as I was kind of getting ready to graduate and everything like that, I was debating on like if I wanted to stay there and all that kind of stuff. And I thought about it. I did interview with a couple other places, but I really liked the Auditor State, and I thought would be an easy transition out of college and all that kind of stuff, and good opportunity. Because one thing I liked about it with the internship was I saw that I was working 40 hours, but all the staff, people who were like full-time workers, were only working 40 hours. And like, if you did go over 40 hours, you actually got paid overtime, versus like if you, not to like disparage people who work at like Big Four accounting firms or any accounting firm, like typically your salary. So if you work more than 40 hours, the money isn't going to change essentially. So that was a factor for me coming out. So I decided to stick with Auditor State. And so that was my first job coming out of college and everything. So I graduated in 2012, spring of 2012. And so that's when I started working in September of 2012 is when I first started working full time for them. And everything, and I was I had an assistant auditor position, is what it was called, that position. And so I was just essentially a staff auditor with them, and auditing, like I mentioned earlier, those like some school districts I did were like Westerville City Schools, Worthington City Schools, which are ones locally here in the Columbus area, Franklin County area, and stuff like that. And then also I got to be on the Franklin County audit itself as well. And so kind of doing those things, got to see like how financial reports are done, how like taxes and tax levies and all that kind of stuff, how that can affect financial reports and like just the company as a whole and everything. So I was working there for a few years. But for me, it was a little bit stressful and all that stuff. And even though I had the balance of like kind of getting that together, like I mentioned earlier, like it started off a little rough, but I kind of got it together after a couple of years. I still just was kind of looking for something different, looking for something fresh. So I started looking for other positions. So once you get into like state, like become a state employee, essentially, it becomes very easy to kind of transition to different areas within state agencies and all that kind of stuff. You don't even get, it's not even like you have to get hired on. It's just essentially like a transfer, almost like you're transferring, like to go from one agency to another, which is what I did. It's really just essentially a transfer. It's almost, if you were like in a bigger company, it would almost like you would be going from different departments essentially. And that's how it functions within the state for the most part. It's like you really just transfer from agency to agency. So with that, one of the benefits of that is all my leave time transferred. and all my experience transferred. So the years of service I have will transfer with me as long as I stay with the state and all that kind of stuff. And even one benefit of it was I worked at the gym at Ohio State, and so that counted as I was a state employee technically when I did that. So I already had years served going in that I didn't figure out until after the fact, but that was a nice benefit as well. And so once I transferred and all that kind of stuff, that's how I got to the current position I am now, which is with the Department of Developmental Disabilities. I transferred from the auditor state to start doing the audits here. And so the audits I do now are a little bit simpler. The ones I did before were more about financial reporting. And these ones I do now are more specific and more in compliance with like specific codes, while the ones I did before were a little bit broader in a sense, just because it was talking about a full financial report for a government entity versus now I'm looking more into more specific providers, and it's different. So that's another thing where even though they're so different, I'm still able to kind of transfer into a different agency with that experience still.
Okay.
I don't know if I missed anything. If I missed anything, you think, just let me know.
Yeah, the one thing I want to know is, did you get paid during that internship?
Yeah. So during the internship, you don't get paid as much as you would as if you were like entry level staff. I want to say with the auditor state at that time, which would have been 2011, the internships rate was, I want to say it was like $15 or $16 an hour, which was way better than anything else I was making at the time. So that would $15 to $16 an hour would equate to essentially like $32,000 a year, essentially. So which is, I mean, solid if you're just doing stuff work over the summer. I do believe some other companies, if you're an intern, they'll pay you like at the entry level rate, which is nice. The auditor state didn't do that, but I wasn't complaining about it. When I first started working, when I did get my entry level position with the auditor state, first coming on full time, that was approximately 40,000. I would say about that time when I first started working with them. And then once you get into the system, or once you get into the state system, from there you don't really, for some jobs you might get bonuses and all that kind of stuff, or like performance and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't really happen with the state. What you get with the state is you get step increases. So your pay increases annually each year, no matter what. And then you can also get promotions as well, which will increase your pay as well, but you never get bonuses. Every now and again, if the state does well as a whole, they'll sometimes give statewide bonuses to if there's like a extra money out there, but that's happened like once since I've been with the state. And
probably happening anytime soon with COVID.
Yeah, that's not happening anytime soon with COVID. And then my agency, the leader, the head auditor of the state at the time, he didn't even give us the bonuses. He gave it back to the government. He gave it back to the state, like, oh, we don't need it. My staff don't need it. And once we found out about that, we were like, wait, did you ask us?
You don't know what my paycheck will look like. Checking my savings is set up right now.
Yeah,
yours. Don't be talking for me.
Right, because I'm pretty sure at the time when they gave out the bonuses, that was right when I was engaged to Rachel, and we were like paying for the wedding. And like I could have got like an extra like I think it was like $700 or something like that. I was like, I could have used that. That could have paid for the DJ, like, you know.
And people with money sometimes completely miss the reality of the impacts that they have on others that they may see as smaller. Not the people, but I'm saying the finance can see a small, maybe great numbers for others. I mean, like I said, I say all the time, and the reason it's always important is because people need to know that I come from humble beginnings. Is I started with 31,000, 31,000. No, I started with 30,000, and then I made it to 31 too. Years with 3 degrees coming out of college.
Yeah.
Each degree earned me $10,000. Each degree was worth $10,000.
That's the way to put it.
Yeah. Anyways, so I didn't actually. It's funny. My 401k, obviously, it comes with a whole bunch of fines and taxes if you try to cash out too soon.
Oh yeah.
So when I switched jobs, I was in the process of deciding on like getting engaged. So that check that came in, I didn't have any money. That wasn't as you. I'm just saying I didn't have no money. So true story. B is actually wearing my first 3 years of my 401k
Sure.
with like
Gotcha.
a couple $100 that I had left in there.
Yeah.
So it was the best that I could do at the
I
time.
feel it. I feel it. I
um,
feel it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, man,
Well, you speaking about that, to circle back to give you that, so the 40K and all that kind of stuff, that's kind of specific to the state. That is close and I would say somewhat competitive with like the other, like with private companies, with accounting firms, which is where a lot of people go with accounting degrees. Or if you go into accounting within a company like Kroger or something like that, a lot of those entry level accounting positions are going to be, I would say, well, maybe now they might be a little bit more, but when I was coming out in 2012, it was around like 40K. Some of them on the higher end might be closer to 50, but usually somewhere in that 40 to 50K range and all that kind of stuff. So when I feel like when you're debating those different areas and all that kind of stuff, you kind of gotta understand what the value of like the 50K is going to be worth. Like I know with the state, like you have really good benefits when you're working with the state and all that kind of stuff, like really good dental, really good health and all that kind of stuff. Not your premiums aren't too high and all that kind of stuff. Because I have had friends who have gone to companies where they thought they were getting more, but then when you factor in like the benefits and the taxes and all that kind of stuff, it kind of ends up being a little bit more equal and all that kind of stuff. So that is things to consider when you're looking for positions and stuff like that. And a lot of people coming out of college don't ask about those things, about the benefits and all that kind of stuff, retirement, all those kind of things. So yeah, do want to throw that in there as well.
do me a favor and speak on. You've mentioned it subtly a couple times, but I want you to go a little bit more in depth. What happens when you find discrepancies in the paperwork?
So it depends on what kind of audit you're doing. So when I was working previously uh, with the auditor state, those discrepancies we noted those are mainly bookkeeping errors for the most part that we would notice there. And so a bookkeeping error, essentially, when you're doing a financial audit, you're really just saying, is the financial report you're putting out uh, accurate within a certain range. Essentially, a lot of the auditing standards is that it has to be like at least like 95% accurate is what you're trying to confirm, that it's within 95%. It's 95% accurate. So that's what usually you're trying to confirm when you're doing a lot of financial audits and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes the standards can be high, so you can make them as high as 99%. You really don't want to start getting down to like 90%. I know that seems great, but 995 is kind of typically like the standard typically. And so as long as things are within that 95% threshold, it's all good. Now, if it starts getting out of that, like if it's the errors are more above 5% essentially, that's where you start putting comments in the report that, hey, this number is, you have to put numbers in a report where like you note that this number is inaccurate, or this number, how do we used to phrase it? It's been a few years now. So maybe so you would have to like note when there were like errors, or a big thing when I was with the auditor state is that they couldn't they would get a certification for their CAFR if it was like accurate, and if it passed the auditor state's like audit. And essentially you wouldn't get that stamp of approval from the auditor state if we noted too many errors, essentially. And that was a pretty big deal. It didn't happen often, so it was a big deal if we ever did have to note like an error and it didn't like get like the stamp of approval that it was like up to snuff, essentially. So and that's more on the financial reporting side. But that's been a few years now, so I'm not as up on the lingo as I used to be. What I do now, I definitely see more consequences for errors and discrepancies and everything like that. So what I do now is essentially the providers I review now, they provide services to people with disabilities. So they're like the people who you might see if you ever see like a van of kids with disabilities, and you see staff working with them, like taking them to the mall or taking them to different places around town and all that kind of stuff, helping them out. Some of them have their own buildings where the people come and do like activities and get trained on how to work and all that kind of stuff. It varies on depending on what level the individual is essentially disabled. It depends on how much they do with them. Some people need like 24 hours care, and some people kind of just need a person with them to help direct them or help them just a little bit. So there are varying degrees to it, but essentially every minute or every hour of the day that they're with an individual and they're providing services to them are billable hours and billable units in a sense. So what they have to do is they have to track the time that they're with the individual, and then track the services that they're providing to the individual. So then they don't have to do this when they submit payment or submit reimbursement requests, but they submit a reimbursement request to Medicaid. And essentially what I do is on the back end, after they've already received the reimbursement, I go back and look at to see if it's historically accurate. So I go pull a report that tells me all the reimbursement payments they received. Like it breaks it down to the service, the date that the service was provided, and how much they got paid for that day. And then I say, well, give me all your stuff for this time period. And I look at it, and if anything is off, for instance, like say if a person worked, they say they provided services to a person for 6 hours one day, and they got paid for, and but they billed 8 hours, you're gonna have a finding for that 2 hour difference. Now it's not a big deal if it's just happens once, because 2 hours of time isn't going to add up to much. But say for instance they did that like every day, and that say like the 2 hour difference was like $10. However much I look at during my audit, they're going to owe that amount back essentially. So like say they made that $10 mistake like 100 times, they're going to owe $1,000 back to Medicaid because they're inaccurate.
Or what?
Or what? or what? Or you go on the list? But seriously, no. Yeah. So if they don't pay it back, essentially what happens is, you get a sternly worded letter. But no, truly, you do. We issue a what we call a waiver review report, which is kind of like a summary of the work we did essentially, and like the rules we followed. And we know all the errors that we have, and we have like a table of all the different service dates and the amounts that are in error essentially. So we provide that not only to them, but the county boards are notified, as well as the other people within Medicaid are notified of it as well. So people do get notified like when providers are making mistakes. And essentially that is, you don't want that, because that kind of puts you on the radar of potentially like fraud audits essentially, because our reviews are mainly just financial reviews. We're not actually like checking to see if somebody like is fraudulent or not. It may sound like that, but we're not.
So you lead to the people that's gonna have to come in and make
yeah. Right, because what can happen with my audit, like say if they don't pay back the money, it would go to collections, to the Attorney General's office, and then they will be coming after them for the money at that point. But also like say if we just note a lot of errors, and even the provider pays it back, if the Department of Medicaid sees like this person like owed $50,000 because they had all these errors, but they did pay the money back, they still might be on their radar to look into them to see if like what they're doing is fraudulent. Because essentially for us, once you pay it back, everything's good, because you paid back the money, you got overpaid, and that's kind of how Medicaid sees it. Like, oh, we overpaid you, we just want our money back, and as long as you pay it back, they're good. But sometimes it can be fraudulent activity, and sometimes we will, if it's like bad enough, forward it on to Medicaid, like, hey, I think this is fraudulent activity. And what they can do is they can essentially stop you from ever getting paid as a provider. They can like take away like provider statuses as like being certified. They can take away their certification and all that kind of stuff. So which is a lot of people who do make a living off being the providers and everything. There's agency, there's different levels to it. There's individual providers, there's county board providers, and then there's agency providers. The most popular is independents and agencies. County boards are kind of getting out of the service provider portion of it. But independents and agencies, like there's multi-million-dollar agencies that provide services to people with disabilities. There's individuals who provide services to individuals. I mean, there's independent providers that provide services to individuals that I've seen, at least, like they just for providing services to one individual has billed over $100,000 in a year. And so that money can add up. And so if they were to like lose their certification, they would lose their livelihood too with it as well. So that's a pretty big deal if they get referred for fraud and all those kind of things.
Yeah. So explain this to me. What's the best part about your job?
What's the best part about it?
What do you enjoy the most about your job?
What do I enjoy the most?
Yes.
I would just say,
sounds like. The
Huh?
best part. So are the best part and the thing you enjoy the most two different things?
Uh,
If they are, feel free to explain and give
yeah.
both answers.
But no, like I would say the best part honestly is really I don't even know if it's the best part, but it's I would say the most fulfilling part and all that kind of stuff is whenever I get done with my review, I have to explain to providers like what's the errors I noted and kind of what they can do to correct the problems going forward. That's the part I enjoy the most because I'm working with the provider at that point to improve and to get better. Uh, Usually it's better to do that when the person only owes like 500 versus like 5,000, or 50,000, and all that kind of stuff. Is a little bit more palatable at that point. But it's really just, what I'm saying, getting into that and just going over the stuff with them. Because most providers are pretty good, but there are, from my experience so far, there are people who do appear to be kind of gaming the system, essentially, providing services to people. And so for those things, I don't want to say it's enjoyable, but it is somewhat rewarding to catch somebody like that's kind of trying to cheat the system, essentially, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not happy to see it, but I am happy to kind of pass along that information that, I'm saying, hey, this person is cheating the system, and there's aren't good providers out there who are doing it correctly, and then this person is just trying to get a payday. And so I
It's
do.
important to acknowledge that a part of that is because these people are taking money.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
we have to make sure that the money is being allocated to the proper services.
Right.
Otherwise, these services that need those finances are going
Right.
to miss out on them while somebody is just profiting individually that may not necessarily need it beyond their wants.
Right. Because all of our tax dollars get dispersed in different agents, get dispersed to different funds and all that kind of stuff. And once they hit those funds, like usually a lot of those funds have budgets and all that kind of stuff that where they only can allocate a certain amount of money to different areas. And so if one person is like taking all the money that's allocated to a certain area, you know what I'm saying, that's a fact. That's your tax dollars kind of being misused and abused and everything. And so I don't think anybody wants their tax dollars to be abused. And so I would say it is, like you said, it's good to catch those people that are kind of stealing cookies from the cookie jar. And
have you ever looked into like higher level governmental? Obviously, you like your job, so I'm not saying that you're gonna leave your job for this. I'm just saying, like, I hear you, I hear your passion, I hear your excitement, which is very interesting to hear someone excited about what you do is pretty cool because I wouldn't do this job. But there are a lot of people out there that need to do this job because they love finance. They love being able to make a difference. And also, if it's not for you, then those organizations that I work for wouldn't have the finance for me to work there and to be able to make a difference in those kids' lives that I loved working with and that needed any services that we provided. So you're absolutely needed. I'm just not the detailed person.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm becoming that with my current role, but to act like I was inherently like that, no. Anyways, so the question is the higher levels of this position, because I immediately go start thinking about the FBI and those type of organizations. I also think about the FBI because I remember when I got out of college, I was very interested in working for the FBI. That didn't happen, obviously. But
unless you got one of the positions where hey, it's nobody knows really. So I don't know. You could be. Are you secret agent out here or something? Maybe I don't know.
I would have had a check to go with that.
Yeah.
Behind the Elantra out there.
Hey man, you might be deep undercover.
Now, I'm deep undercover in the sense that I don't need to still be driving that. I could definitely get a new car.
Yeah.
But I don't want to because I just like my money. At some point, I'm gonna get a better car. But I just like having my money opposed to just looking at my money and not having my money. Nonetheless, though, yeah. Have you ever thought about that, or are there those dream jobs for you, your position, that are out there?
I've never looked specifically for like FBI or RS. I did look at like federal positions like what do they call it, Department of like Defense and all that kind of stuff have positions in the Columbus area and all that kind of stuff. And I have looked at federal positions before, just kind of see like kind of what it is and everything like that. But I'll be honest with you, since I've gotten with the state.
Hey, man, what's good?
Want to come say hi to Mario? No.
Really, bro? That's how you feel?
No. Do you have underwear on? We're potty training. This is like real life. We're potty training. Yeah. You gonna say hi?
Hey, you remember me? Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah, you see me on there? You see me on the screen?
Oh, he was excited about your face on the screen.
He was excited about me.
Music.
But I'll probably be done in like 15 minutes. So.
Okay. I'm just gonna be ready to roll. So
okay. Are you gonna have to catch me up? Okay. All right.
Come on.
Yeah. I'll be down there later.
Let's go.
Yeah. It's okay. I'll be done soon, Z. But where were we?
What's the dream job, if there is one, of an auditor?
So in terms of my career trajectory, I could stay with the company I'm with. I could stay with DODD and kind of go up to chief audit as well. There could be potential to be like financial director and chief financial officer for DODD as well. But there are other options out there as well. I could transfer within the state and go work for places like Jobs and Family Services or Department of Education, all these different, any state agency that you can think of, I could essentially transfer to that have auditor positions, and I could transfer at a different level potentially. But
that would also diversify your skill set too, right?
Yeah, then that would diversify my skill set and kind of make me more overall better auditor and just person in terms of business acumen and all those kind of things. But then there's also as I've kind of gotten a lay of the land with like working with DODD, there's things I could even do potentially where they have billing agents for the different agencies that provide services to people with disabilities. They will use billing agents to bill on their behalf, to look at their books and make sure things are accurate and all that kind of stuff. And I can see even a potential idea of becoming my own billing agent where I could also provide consulting services, become an internal auditor for them essentially, and just make sure that prior to them having an audit, I can make sure that their books are accurate and offer that as a service. So there's multiple avenues you can go with potential ideas if I were to leave the company I'm with or the agency I'm with.
Okay, that's great to hear. It allows people to see the options that are out there for themselves, especially if they decide to go into take your path and maybe want to discover something after if they think that it's just something they want to do. So do me a favor, speak a little bit more on retirement. You've mentioned that because of your current position and what you do, you could potentially retire around 55, which is significantly early, especially in the world that we live in, where money and the value of the money is continuously going down, and you need to keep making more and more and more to potentially keep up with just life advancing around you. So how is that possible? What type of income would you and your wife have to live off of during that time period? What would retirement look like? Because it sounds like it's retirement from this position with some type of benefits taking place, and another option on the side when you feel like it, as in like your own business or whatnot.
Right. Yeah. So I'm not gonna act like I'm the retirement genius, but the retirement the retirement fund for state employees is called OPERS, which is the Ohio Public Employees Retirement System. That's what OPERS stands for. So that's the fund I pay into for my retirement. So with them, once you get to 30 years, you're essentially eligible for retirement at that point. There is a minimum age before you can start like collecting the retirement. So say I worked 30 years, and from there, if I was making enough money at that time to go like part-time, or to even if I started working somewhere else or just started my own business at that point, once I hit the 30 years, once I did get to the age requirement, which I want to say is around 60 technically right now. I could start collecting on that. And so the way you collect, the way you would collect on your retirement is you would earn the amount you would earn per year is what you were at the last few years you were in your position with the state. I don't know exactly how many years. I want to say it's like the average of the last 3 to 5 years of the position you had. So whatever your average salary was, your like last 3 to 5 years was with the state, that's what you would collect on at that point. And so that's kind of my thing. So you're not, once you do start collecting retirement, you can retire and then get rehired. That happens quite often. I don't know all the ins and outs of that because I'm not as close to that option yet. But I do know many of people who have retired and then just started working on the side with using their degree, whether it's doing like taxes or whether it's doing like some consulting services or anything like that. So that's kind of potentially something I might look into, is kind of retiring a little bit earlier and then just collecting retirement as well as doing something else on the side.
Okay. So let's talk numbers. We're towards the end of this interview, so we have to talk numbers. So when we're talking about salaries and entry level salaries, what are we looking at? You just graduated college. What are we looking at?
So yeah, when you're just coming out of college, I would say for most auditing positions, I would say probably they're more between like 45 and 55K per year, I would guess. Because when I was coming out, which was in 2012, they were probably ranging between 40 and 50, 50 being on the high end, but I would say probably most around like 45 or whatever. So I'm guessing just based off just I'm not looking at entry level positions these days, so I don't fully know what they're at in today's date, but I would imagine that they're closer to between that 45 and 55K range in an entry level position.
Okay, that makes sense. And as you go up the ranks, what are salaries looking like?
So that's where it can vary. I know for me, in my position, it gets into the low six figures. Like it can get to like 100K, depending on like as high as I probably could go in the positions I'm in. Over 100K, but it will get into like low six figures. But I know it's like
low six figures meaning under 200.
Yeah, like under 200. Like I would say, like you're in the 100s, but probably nothing over like 250 or anything like that. So,
Courtney, tell me this: what is so just want to hop in really quickly. Tell me what is the salary range for you currently?
So I would say the salary range for me, where somebody's in my current position, I would say between approximately 60 to 70K, somewhere falling within that range. For the most part at this point in their career or at this level, the position I'm in. Which would be an external auditor, still staff auditor, but you've a couple steps up though.
All right. So that's really interesting. So we obviously know you're still young in the game. You got some tenure a little bit inside of your company, but still you got a lot of movement to go up that ladder, especially knowing that people are on the six figures, and six figures doesn't, if we're honest, it doesn't sound like it's too far away. It sounds like it's probably like a couple years and a move or two away from you actually being in that range, especially with your experience. Would that be accurate to say?
Yeah. Depending on like how aggressive I am and all that kind of stuff in terms of moving around and shaking and baking and all that kind of stuff. Six figures is definitely in the ballpark within, I would say, definitely within 10 years and probably even within 5, depending on like, how promotions go and all that kind of stuff and everything. So yeah.
Okay. Like I said, we are getting to the end, but I can't go without asking this question because of the fact that we are in 2020 and COVID is happening.
Yeah.
But I also perceive that a lot of people have their paperwork online now. But if I don't want to be audited, maybe I keep it as papers and make your life a little bit difficult. How frequent do you have to travel for work?
Well, now I don't travel for work. For my old position, there are auditors who do travel around for work. For me, we do what we call our desk audits, and so that's where you send your paperwork to us. And so now we pretty much just have everybody email their docs to us. So even if you do it on paper, you're gonna have to send it to me electronically anyway. If you do want to be difficult, you could mail the documentation to me. So we did used to have providers do that where they would mail the documentation to us. That actually used to be the standard, so we didn't have to worry about like printing it off and stuff like that. So yeah, so you not so if you got selected for an audit, um, not to be like saying morbid and all that kind of stuff, but unless you did, you gonna get this audit.
Work.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, usually only if the person is deceased, or if the person yeah, I think that's the only time where like we might select a person for an audit and not actually go through with it. Now, a person can like essentially refuse to cooperate and not send in their documentation. We have had that happen in the past, but what happens is like, okay, say we were planning to review like $100,000 worth of billing for you, and you elect not to send anything into us, you're just gonna owe that whole $100,000 back to Medicaid because there's no proof that you provided the services. So if there's no proof that you provided the services, then you owe all the money back to Medicaid.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that there's more things I could have asked you, but maybe another time.
Yeah,
But
part two. Yeah.
what you leave with is whatever your final thoughts are, anything you want people to go away with.
My biggest thing is and with Mario doing this series, so hopefully you guys are getting a lot out of it. The biggest thing is that there's so many different avenues wherever you want to go. There's all the different options, and you're never too late in life to learn something new. So if you are in a position where you don't feel like it's correct for you, and you want to switch it up, there is avenues to switch it up too. I mean, sometimes that might mean going back to school and all those kind of things, but sometimes you got to make sacrifices to get to where you want. So sometimes you have to do that later in life. Sometimes you do it earlier in life. No matter what it is, the biggest thing is the work you have right now. Do it to the best of your ability. Do it with a joy, what I'm saying, that you have, because I do feel like you have to have like an inner joy within yourself that you have to carry, despite how bad the job may be. If it's not great, if it's amazing, still need to have that same joy, no matter where you go. And I feel like if you carry that with you, people will see it, and then people will be attracted to that as well. And then on top of that, I would just say, just be encouraged and don't be bound by your present circumstances, but always be looking forward to more and to greater things, but not necessarily what I'm saying, get too wrapped up in the finances of it. It's all about, like I mentioned earlier, work-life balance, as well as just being able to do all the things that you want to do with the job that you have. If you're super in love with your job and you want it to just be the things you think about even when you're at home, then that's fine. If you're that type of person, keep doing you. But if it's something that you want to just be able to leave once you walk out the door, you have to be able to judge that for yourself and know kind of what works best for you. So some person may have a job that you think is great, but if you go into it, it might not be great for you. And so you just have to be able to understand that and know what works best for you. And really, at the end of the day, no matter, despite the job you have, if you have that inner peace and you have that inner joy in yourself, your job, what I'm saying, you'll get by and you'll be fine.
All right, man, I appreciate that. So this is what I gathered from the interview and from you is, first off, you need to know yourself. Really know who you are, be comfortable with that, and gain the exposure that's going to allow you to make well-informed decisions, just like you did when you were in college and you listened to one of your peers who was a part of NABA and they told you, oh, this is my internship experience. And you're like, you know what? I thought I was interested in this. I know who I am. I know what I desire. And maybe I need to explore alternative options. And that opens you up to a life that you enjoy and opens you up to doing what you want to do. And that is a very, very valid point. I also took away that you must have balance. It's not easy, but that balance brings peace. And as a person who has worked in a lifestyle that doesn't necessarily come with a whole lot of balance, I absolutely will acknowledge that it is important for one to value the family time, value their spirituality, and really lean into those things because it allows them to be guided in their decisions as well as what they're doing, and allows work to be more meaningful because of the people and the intentions that you are impacting by doing this. And the last thing is, happy not content. You live with that, and I have to say that that is a very, very powerful thing. I'm never content, man. I absolutely understand that idea, but also be happy in the moment. Enjoy what you're doing. Enjoy the process.
Right.
But also know that it is a process. It is not the end goal. And so contentment is not allowed in this process. It is allowed to be enjoyed, but it's not allowed to be accepted as the only option unless that's the life you want to live. That ain't the life I want to live, and it don't sound like the life you want to live.
Mm-hmm.
Be great, y'all. I appreciate you, Courtney, man. Thank you so much for your time, dog.
For having me, my brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Like that, to it ease.
Hey.
Oh, we. Jesus.